The rarest and most valuable class of creator is the one who can walk away from the platforms and still have an audience follow them. David Perel.
Did you know there's a class structure within the creator economy? It looks a little bit different than the typical American class hierarchy, but the classes are the same. It's just in a different shape. We're going to talk about the creator economy and the whole content creator universe and what does it mean to be in each of those classes as a creator? Because if you look at the creator economy from a social class lens, you can understand what the incentives are lined up with creators. And with that, why certain creators take certain sponsorships, why they say the things they have, why are some people more free to say certain things more than others? It kind of, and where the wealth is really generated within the creator economy, which is a rapidly high growth sector of the US economy. And it's allowing a lot of entrepreneurs whose income is primarily from content creation, or they use content creation as a linchpin to help drive a off internet business. Either way, it's becoming an increasingly valuable part of the way that people interact with the goods and services that they purchase in the economy. And so, without further ado, let's get started. The creator economy is the dependent class, just like the dependent class in the real economy. The difference is that the government is not giving social welfare to people just because they are low tier creators. The definition of the dependent class, I would change the name actually to the unknown class. And I'm calling it unknown classes because basically nobody really knows who they are. Nobody's willing to pay them to endorse their content. And people don't make business decisions or purchasing decisions or based on their confidence. They're not really influencing any people. These are people generally with, I would put in the category of 1,000 subscribers or less on YouTube, or that equivalent level on other social media platforms. A subscriber on YouTube is not worth the same, for example, as a subscriber on Instagram or a follower on LinkedIn or X. They're all very different. They're very sensitive to the algorithm. If the algorithm rewards them, they might actually get the chance where they make some income. If the algorithm doesn't show them, they never get seen. The example would be like TikTokers. TikTokers are probably the most sensitive to the algorithm. Their payouts are probably the most unpredictable and volatile. And it's very difficult to create any sort of ancillary business just around primarily TikTok. And the other thing is reaction content. Reaction content is really dependent on being allowed to react to other content producers. If that policy ever changes, they're gone pretty quickly. A lot of smaller creators, and I did this when I was a small creator, will do reaction videos of larger creators to help get more visibility. Or if they want to make a video on a certain topic, if they integrate it with a reaction, then it might get exposure. But the problem is that if you just stay a permanently reaction content creator and don't branch out beyond that, you're basically relying on riding the sails of another boat or drafting behind another race car your whole entire content career. And if the people you react to becomes less popular, or you're not good at finding the newest people to react to, then you're going to lose your audience because people don't want to see original content. They just want to see you react to others. There are plenty of people who've made a lot of money as reaction content creators, but it's kind of a precarious position. The next level is the precariat. There really isn't much of a precariat in content creating, because if you're at the precariat level of income on any sort of content platform, it's not your primary source of income. And if it is, you're a dependent class person in real life. If I was living solely off of advertising revenue from YouTube, I would be in the real life precariat class. Thankfully, I have a real business that I do as my main full-time job. So That is not my circumstance. And I don't really recommend anybody being stuck in the precarious content level because you have enough subscribers that you're monetized, like 1,000 plus. This is probably like, but you don't have enough traction that you're making material income. So off of YouTube. So like, given that you're self-employed and there's some more expense you have to pay out of pocket versus like being an employee, and the volatility of ad revenue and Patreon and YouTube memberships or super chats. I put that all in like algorithm driven income. So anything that comes from like either content creation or donations based on content creation. If you're below like $6,000 USD a month, but you are monetized, you are in the content creator precariat. And basically your social class is what your social class is in real life. So if you have a middle class job, but have precariat level YouTube income on the side, you are a middle class person, but you're a content precariat. If you are somehow like your own little practice in something like accounting practice, then you do YouTube videos about financial accounting, then you are an independent professional class. If you are somebody who is in the precariat in the real life, yes. So basically, for everybody in YouTube who's middle class and below, your real life class is what your class driver is, not your content class. The real risk is that you just burn out because it's not really worth your time. I see a lot of creators who have decent numbers of subscribers and got a lot of views, but they just quit and burnt out because they thought they can do this as a career, even at a reasonably large size of a content platform. And I'm just going to use YouTube as an example because I'm the most familiar with it. The juice isn't going to be worth the squeeze. You're still going to have a real job and then do this full time. It's just going to exhaust and burn people out. I've seen a lot of my favorite YouTubers quit over the years because they can't balance this. You should never go into YouTube to make it your primary career. It's just bad career advice. Anybody who says, despite it being a dream of Gen Zers. And this is because most people in YouTube don't make it past these two levels. 98% of YouTubers fail to make it past the content creator precariat. So where is the working class in the creator economy? Well, the working class is not the people who are actually creating content. The working class in the content creator economy are the people who do all the back end stuff, which is at real risk in AI. That's the main risk of the working class of content creation. But these are people like video editors, people who create products like cameras, ring lights, backdrops, or vendors for things such as Canva or recording software. They're not working class necessarily in their real life, even though there's a lot of working class people who have built niche industries, particularly in emerging market countries, like being people who make thumbnails, people who write scripts, people who will do your editing, people who will do your social media. That is like the working class of content creation. And whether they are a business that's scaled successfully and the owners are fairly wealthy, or just some individual doing it on their own. The middle class of YouTube are content creators who basically their entire income is dependent on the content platform that they put their content on, but they make enough money that it can easily replace a middle class job. I'm not really going to name specific names because I don't know if the creators would take it as a compliment or an insult to be put in this category. But this is like a YouTube channel with 100,000 to a million subscribers, but you don't really have any back end business or funnel. You don't have any sort of off YouTube platform that is collecting data about your audience. And so if YouTube decides to shut you down, you're dead. It's very precarious in that way. And I would say most mid-sized to large-sized successful YouTubers who have not built a successful funnel outside of that or in this category, like a few examples would probably be like people like Kraut or What If Alt Hist. I mean, unless if they have like separate consulting businesses or other revenue streams that I don't know about, they're pretty big channels, but they don't have any sort of business and they are dependent totally on the platform. And so they have to keep making content on the platform in perpetuity or they don't make money anymore. And if they say something that the platform doesn't like, they can get demonetized, and that is a big deal to them. This is the group that's the most dependent on. They don't really have another job to fall back on, like the people in the lower tier, and they don't really have a business outside of it. So, yeah, the next level really is, again, like in our American class hierarchy, the independent professional class and the institutional professional class. The independent professional class are people who have their own media and produce content. They have businesses and other products and services that are linked to it. Like example would be myself. I have this YouTube channel, but I don't only do this YouTube channel for a living. The YouTube channel is great and I like sharing content with you, but my core business is my wealth management firm. I also have a Substack, which people can join and get a free copy of my old money reading guide for joining the Substack, as well as emails that have updates on new videos and some of my ancillary commentary that I don't necessarily include in the video itself about the topics of the videos. And I do this, one, just to provide a better experience for you guys, but also so if YouTube ever shuts me down, I could still contact everybody on the Substack list. I could still do meetups. I could still tell people about other activities I'm doing, or if I have to move to a different platform, I can let you know. So that is why you need to find a way, whether it's Substack, an email list, some way to get your clients. You can't contact DM people based on YouTube based on a comment. And I don't think you'll ever be able to do that because I don't think viewers want to be harassed by content creators trying to sell them things. So that's the independent professional classes, that you have an outside business and YouTube kind of is an extension of that, whether it's an extension of your brand, whether it's leads for your business or your creative outlet that just happened to take off. Like examples other than myself who fit in this independent professional category, like Patrick Boyle, who's like a bigger finance creator, has outside business activities connected to YouTube. I would say that JP Sears, who's a comedian who goes on tour for his comedy shows, he has sponsors, he has a mailing list, he has some core things outside of his business. Other examples would be just a lot of financial YouTubers who mention their investment firms, lawyers who mention their law firms, etc. I would say a bunch of businesses do this. The key thing though is of the independent professional classes, you have to have it off platform. Just say you have a sponsorship in a video and you have super chats and memberships, that still all depend on the platform. Another example, a great example of the independent professional class would be Dr. Orion Taraban at PsychHacks. He's a clinical psychologist who has a practice. He also has his YouTube channel and people find him and hire him for therapy or other advice. YouTube becomes a giant lead gen to fill up his book. The other example would be Graham Steffens, who's one of the bigger financial creators. He started as a realtor, but he built a successful YouTube channel and he now has a lot of products and he's almost at the successful business owner class, but it still relies on him as a personality. And that's the key difference. You can't move up to the successful business owner level until your personality is not driving the content anymore. On the other side, the institutional professional class, you have a big following as a content creator and you make a good living from it, but you don't own the back end. You still are working for a larger media company or are tied to more establishment institutions who primarily finance your lifestyle and are the basis of your credibility. Examples of institutional professional class content creators would be people like Matt Walsh, who has built a successful following on his own, but he does work for the Daily Wire and they are his employer. And so therefore he is kind of in their platform. Example, this would also be like any reporters or commentators who work for major networks like CNN or Fox News or MSNBC or their international equivalents. They might have developed their own unique brand and they probably get paid pretty well. Or the same with ESPN sports commentators, like the Stephen A. Smiths of the world. But they still are inherently part of the institution. They are not self-employed. So those are the institutional professional class. So up is the Ivy League class, which I put Scott Galloway in that category, actually, even though he's a professor at NYU Stern. But it's people who are in the institutional professional class, but they've moved up to the level that they are within 1 degree of separation from the major power brokers in media. They have a lot of institutional credibility and have respectable opinions and platforms that are in line with the establishment culturally and with the major media outlets if they're affiliated with them. Examples of this would be like people like Niall Ferguson, Peter Zehan would probably fit in this. Yeah, they basically, they're frequently like hired to speak within the think tanks, government, Fortune 500 as they're hire them, and they get a lot of their money from that. And they might have a piece in the content creator economy, but it's more for branding more than as like a primary source of income. Like these are kind of where Tucker Carlson is probably in this category too, even though he is technically on his own. He has built his brand through the institutional and media connections. That's the Ivy League class. Tyler Cowen is probably in Marginal Revolution is probably another good example of this too. Same with Tucker. The next example I would do is the successful business owner class. These are people who are at the same income levels and the same level of pull as these Ivy League people, but they own their own platforms. And they've built them in a way that it's not dependent on a single personality. Two great examples of this are Simon Whistler, who runs a lot of YouTube channels such as Today I Know, and more. The one I like is Biographics. Usually it was certainly him narrating them all himself and doing all these stories about various interesting people's and history's lives. But since then, he has now hired other people to do the narration, write the scripts, and other people to do a lot of the editing and production. And now he's the guy who owns it from behind. Another real example of this is Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey originally started as an independent media guy and built his whole Dave Ramsey financial planning model and financial planning empire based on his anti-debt views and straight to the point attitude on managing personal finance. As he's gotten older, he realized he needs to create an independent platform. He built Ramsey Network and he has people like his daughter, John Deloney, and others who kind of are the new faces, so that the bulk of like the views and the revenues now are not coming from Dave himself, but all the other people at Ramsey Media. And that's how you become successful business owner class in the creator economy. And people like Graham Steffens are transitioning to that path. I think you'll see a lot of other content creators realize like they have a choke point, a bottleneck of their business is them themselves. They don't have time to be the only content producer and have the same level of scale that they would like. I just know, for example, I would have a hard time running at a pace of making more than a couple videos a week, especially because I only have so much time to record content and do a lot of this stuff. And I have other business things I need to do. And I have to have a personal life. If the bottleneck becomes yourself, once you realize that, that's why people try to branch out. But the problem is with content creator economy, it's a lot more difficult to make that jump than other industries because a lot of the reason why people like your content is because of your personality and your insights. So if you hand that off to somebody else, that becomes a problem. Like another example would be a guy like Michael Kitces, who's built a platform about how RIAs, financial advisors, can build their businesses through content. And there are some who you think would be in this category who are really big channels, but just aren't because it is built solely off of themselves and not really on other core businesses or other people who fill the roles. And then you have the last two tiers, the counter elite and the establishment elite. The establishment elite are owners of legacy media or independent media that is big enough that it really has a say on socio-political narrative of society. Like examples of this would be people like Rupert Murdoch, who owns Fox. It would be the people who own all the mainstream media outlets. It would be, I've debated whether to put Tucker Carlson here or in the Ivy League class, but he could arguably be placed here. Ben Shapiro is in this category. A good left-wing equivalent for the institutional professional class or the Ivy League class would be Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks. Even though he's technically the founder of it, it's venture backed and has a lot of outside donors who fund it. That's kind of another really example is there are people who actually own the media platforms that are established, whether they've been around for a long time or are part of the consensus narrative shaping side of things. Then you have the counter elite who built their platform solely outside of the traditional media channels, but they are big and just as influential as the traditional media channels. Oh yeah, I'd say also like Disney Corporation is a classic, or ESPN, or any of those are also in the institutional class when it comes to content creation. But the other side, apparently, the most notable example is Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan potentially swung elections based on his podcasts. He has a multi-million-dollar contract with Spotify, and he has a lot of his own brand deals, his own platform. He is not going to be at any risk at D&D platform because people will go and find him. Another example of this would probably be like Glenn Beck and Blaze. Like he completely built that. So it used to be his personality, but it's now mainly driven by other. Alex Hormozy might be another good example of somebody in this category too, where their influence is not determined solely on a platform. People will go to them, and they've gotten to the level that they're really shaping national and cultural narrative. It's not just political, you can be apolitical and in this category as well. There are progressive versions of all of these too. Mr. Beast would be maybe an example of a content counter elite. He is in a lot of his channels. He has a bunch of real products outside of his content, and he has built it so it doesn't solely rely on him. The bottom line is that the main way to measure like the class level and the content creation is two axes. One is how much revenue you're generating, and two is how fragile is your revenue. Like if you're totally dependent on the YouTube algorithm and a single platform, you're middle class or lower in this hierarchy. If you are employed by a large media institution or you run a large media institution, you are in the institutional side. If you are building your own platform independently from scratch, you are in the independent side. And depending on whether it relies on you or not, that's kind of whether you make it to the high rankings. If you're so big, like a Jordan Peterson or a Joe Rogan, it doesn't matter whether you're the face of it or not. They're anti-fragile at that point. So it's really just a measure of fragility versus income. Somebody who's high in both, that is high in income and low in fragility, is going to be the top of the content creator class hierarchy. Let me know if you'd like me to do these for other industries. Where does your favorite content creator rank on this hierarchy? I would love to hear your feedback on this. Do you think any of the people I mentioned, do you think they belong on a different place on the ladder or not? I would love to hear your feedback. Thank you for watching.